Hi, I'm Denny with Springfield Leather again. We're back for the second part of what I believe is probably going to be a three-part series on beginner's leather carving. Uh, if you didn't get to watch the first part of this series, I would suggest that you do go back and have a look at it. But this is where we are so far. We've got our design traced, cut with a swivel knife, and beveled. Now we're getting ready to go with use our backgrounder and get all our backgrounded areas. I told you a little bit about the backgrounding tool before, but they make different sizes of these with different textures and different shapes. This is a fairly small one. It's got a blunt end on one end and a sharp end on the other side. If you have large areas of background to do, you can get a larger background head. But if you do it and you're going to use it with a smaller backgrounder in conjunction with each other, you need to make sure you get the same texture on them. But anyway, with all that aside, like I said, it's got a sharp end and a blunt end. So we're going to start backgrounding these areas here. When the sharp end, when you get to a corner like this, that's where you want the sharp end. And this doesn't take a lot of pressure. Your leather doesn't want to be too wet when you're doing this. Doesn't want to be too dry either. But I'll just go around the perimeter on these, go all the way around, and then I'll fill in the middle part. So if you want to watch, I'll just do some of these background areas. If you notice, I turned my tool around. Now I'm using the pointed end again. And this tool gives a fairly rustic effect, so don't worry about getting everything real smooth because you probably aren't going to anyway. All right, we've got all our background completed. All that background does, whoops, I missed one spot. But all the background does basically is differentiate between your actual floral pattern and the area behind it. It sure makes it stand out a little bit more. You see more of what you have. Okay, next we'll use our pear shader. And like I told you before, some people will use what they call a thumbprint. A thumbprint is a little more modern tool, but this is a more traditional tool. And it has a checkered surface. The reason I use a checkered surface, the reason I like one, is for one thing, it adds a little texture to your design. But I use an antique paste to do the finish on a lot of my stuff. And those little checks will hold a little bit of that antique material. So when you wipe it back off of the surface, a little bit of that stays in the bottom, gives you a little more of a shadow effect. To me, that's a little more pleasing. But all that aside, now we'll start with our thumbprint, and I'm going to start with the flower petals, and I won't do very much on them. Just you always want to make sure when you're doing something on a flower to aim it towards the center of the flower. That creates a flow. Okay, I've used a pear shader on all these flower petals. Now I'm going to go to these other, some people call these leaves, I call them chicken necks, just because that's kind of what they look like to me. But anyway, I'll just do the same thing. The flower center is where you aim your pear shader to on that structure. But this, your leaves or chicken necks, there's an ever receding point of convergence there that you want to follow all the way around, and that's what you want to aim towards. Okay, I've got all my pear shading done. If you'll notice when you're doing this, after you've stamped on it a little bit, your leather will start to curl and misshape, but you just need to reshape it a little bit so it sits flat on your stamping surface. But anyway, with the pear shading done, I guess we're done with this series. We've got a few more steps to do, which we will cover in the last part. Hope to see you there. Bye.